Dear students, welcome back for our next lecture on proteins biosynthesis. We have already discussed the basics and tools related to this process. Now we shall try to understand how this process proceeds and what happens once it is complete. The process of translation can be divided into three phases. The initiation, elongation, and termination. Aside from the ribosome, messenger RNA, and transfer RNA, there are some additional proteins which are required for the successful completion of each phase. So, because certain steps in initiation differ significantly in prokaryotes and eukaryotes, so initiation will be described separately for the two groups. The elongation and termination phases will be discussed largely as they take place in bacteria, which have been the focus of many recent studies of translation. So the main task of initiation is to place the first amino acyl transfer RNA in the P site of ribosome, if you remember the P site of ribosomes, and in this way establish the correct reading frame of messenger RNA. In most prokaryotes and all eukaryotes, the first amino acid in any newly synthesized polypeptides is methionine, which is specified by codon AUG. It is inserted not by methionine transfer RNA. I mean, this methionine is not inserted by normal methionine transfer RNA. But it is inserted by special transfer RNA, which is called initiator transfer RNA, and is symbolized as tRNA met I. So in bacteria, a formyl group is added to the methionine while the amino acid is attached to the initiator, forming N-formyl methionine. The formyl group on N-formyl methionine is removed later on. We may ask a question that how does the translation machinery know where to begin? I mean, messenger RNA is a long molecule, so how does machinery knows where to start? In other words, how is the initiation codon or AUG is selected from selected from among many stop codons in messenger RNA molecule. You need to know that there are several AUG codons in a normal messenger RNA. Only one of them, or sometimes there are some exceptions, but generally one of them is selected for protein translation. So recall that in both prokaryotes and eukaryotes, messenger RNA has a 5' untranslated region consisting of sequence between transcriptional start site and translation start site. So this is the start codon. As you will see in the figure, the nucleotide sequence of 5' UTR adjacent to the AUG initiator is critical. This sequence, I mean this start codon and this sequence is critical for ribosome binding prokaryotes but not in eukaryotes. Initiation codons are preceded by a special sequence called Shine-Delgarno sequence. that pair with 3' end of an ribosomal RNA. Here is the ribosomal RNA, which is called the 16S ribosomal RNA in the 30S ribosomal subunit. So this pairing correctly positions the initiator codon in the P site, where the initiator transfer RNA will bind. The mRNA can pair only with a 30S subunit that is dissociated from the rest of ribosome. Note again that ribosomal RNA performs the key function in ensuring that the ribosome is at the right place to start translation. So three proteins IF1, IF2, and IF3. Here IF stands for initiation factor. So these three proteins are required for correct initiation. IF3 is necessary to keep the 30S, this IF3. IF3 is necessary to keep the 30S subunit dissociated from the 50S subunit of ribosome, and IF1 and IF2 act to ensure that only the initiated transfer RNA enters the P site. The 30S subunit, which is this one, U1. So the 30S subunit messenger RNA and initiator transfer RNA constitute the initiation complex. Here is the initiation complex, and the complete 70S ribosome is formed. This one, the 70S, is formed by the association of 50S large subunit, this one, with the initiation complex and the release of initiation factors. So because prokaryotes lacks a nuclear compartment that separates transcription and translation, the prokaryotic initiation complex is able to form at a Shine-Delgarno sequence near the 5' end of an RNA that is still being transcribed. So thus translation can begin on prokaryotic RNAs even before they are completely transcribed. So unlike prokaryotes, transcription and translation take place in separate compartments of the eukaryotic cell. The eukaryotic messenger RNAs are transcribed and processed in the nucleus before export to the cytoplasm for translation. On arrival in the cytoplasm, the messenger RNA is usually covered with proteins, and regions may be double helical due to the intramolecular base pairing. These regions of secondary structure must be removed to expose the AUG initiator codon. This removal is accomplished by eukaryotic initiation factors called EIF, 4A, B, and G. These initiation factors associate with the cap structure found at the 5' end of virtually all the eukaryotic messenger RNAs, and with the 40S subunit and initiator transfer RNA to form an initiation complex. So once in place, the complex moves in the 5' to 3' direction and unwinds the base paired regions. So at the same time, the exposed sequence is scanned for, the start codon where translation can begin. After the start codon is properly aligned with initiator, uh, transfer RNA, the initiation complex is joined by 60S subunit to form the 80S ribosome. As in prokaryotes, the eukaryotic initiation factor dissociates from ribosome before elongation phase of the translation begins. So it is during the process of elongation that the ribosome most resembles a factory. The messenger RNA acts as a blueprint specifying the delivery of cognate transfer RNAs, each carrying as cargo an amino acid. Each amino acid is added to the growing polypeptide chain while the deacetylated transfer RNA is recycled by the addition of another amino acid. You can see this process in this figure. So two protein factors called elongation factor TU-EFT or EFTU and elongation factor G-EFG assist the elongation process. So as described earlier, an amino acyl transfer RNA is formed by the covalent attachment of an amino acid to the 3' end of a transfer RNA that contains the correct anticodon. Before amino acyl transfer RNA can be used in protein synthesis, they associate with the protein factor EFTU to form a ternary complex composed of transfer RNA, amino acid, and EFTU. The elongation cycle starts with an initiator transfer RNA and its attached methionine in the P site and with the A site ready to accept the ternary complex. So when the correct match has been made, the ribosome changes shape. The EFTU leaves the ternary complex. Here, it leaves the ternary. And the two amino acyl ends are juxtaposed in the peptidyl transferase center of the large subunit. So there a peptide bond is formed with the transfer of a methionine in the P site to the amino acid in the A site. So at this point, the second protein factor, the EFG, plays this EFG factor plays its part. The EFG factor appears to fit into the A site. Its entry into that site shifts the transfer RNA in the A and P sites to the P and E sites respectively, and the messenger RNA moves through the ribosome so that the next codon is positioned in the A site. When EFG leaves the ribosome, the A site is open to accept the next ternary complex. In subsequent cycles, the A site is filled with a new ternary complex as the deacetylated transfer RNA leaves the E site. So as elongation progresses, the number of amino acids on the peptidyl transfer RNA at the P site increases. Eventually, the amino terminal end of the growing polypeptide emerges from the tunnel in the 50S subunit and protrudes from the ribosome as a polypeptide chain. So the termination. The cycle continues until the codon in the A site is one of the three stop codons. These stop codons are UGA, UAA, or UAG. Recall that no transfer RNAs recognize these codons. So instead, proteins called release factors RF1, RF2, and RF3 in bacteria recognize stop codons. So in bacteria, RF1 recognizes UAA or UAG, whereas RF2 recognizes UAA or UGA. Both are assisted by RF3. The interaction between release factor 1 and release factor 2 and the A site differs from that of the ternary complex in two important ways. First, the stop codons are recognized by tripeptides in the RF proteins, not by an anticodon. Secondly, the release factors fit into the A site of the 30S subunit, but do not participate in peptide bond formation. Instead, a water molecule gets into the peptidyl transferase center, and its presence leads to the release of polypeptide from the transfer RNA in the P site. The ribosomal subunits separate, both subunits separate, and the 30S subunit is now ready to form a new initiation complex. So this is the final step of protein formation. Now protein is synthesized and the next step is post-translational modifications. So what happens once translation is complete? Still, there are several processes called post-translational modifications. These include protein folding inside the cell, post-translational modification of amino acid chains, and protein targeting. These are three major events once the protein is synthesized. So the most important post-translational event is the folding of the nascent protein. Nascent proteins means newly synthesized protein into its correct three-dimensional shape. A protein that is folded correctly is said to be in the native conformation, in contrast with an unfolded or misfolded protein that is non-native. Or we can say that the conversion of primary structure to secondary, tertiary, or quaternary structures is protein folding. So the distinct structures of proteins are essential for their enzymatic activity, for their ability to bind to DNA, or for their structural roles in the cell. Next event after the synthesis of proteins is post-translational modification of amino acid chains. As already discussed, proteins are polymers of amino acids made from any of the 20 different types. However, biochemical analysis of many proteins reveals that a variety of molecules can be covalently attached to amino acid chains. So there are more than 300 modifications of amino acid side chains which are possible after translation. So there are, I mean, there are more than 300. So on it can include phosphorylation and dephosphorylation, methylation, glycosylation, acetylation, and ubiquitination. So for you, I think we shall discuss only two of these commonly encountered post-translational modifications, which is phosphorylation or dephosphorylation and ubiquitination. So phosphorylation enzymes called kinases attach phosphate groups to the hydroxyl groups of amino acid serine, threonine, and tyrosine, whereas enzymes called phosphatases remove these phosphate groups because phosphate groups are negatively charged. Their addition to their addition to a protein usually changes protein conformation. So the addition and removal of phosphate groups serves as a reversible switch to control a variety of cellular events, including enzyme activity, protein-protein interactions, and protein-DNA interactions. Ubiquitination. So the modification targeting a protein for degradation is the addition of chains of multiple copies of a protein called ubiquitin to the lysine residues. So normally the last residue of ubiquitin, which is a glycine, is attached with lysine of a substrate. So ubiquitin contains 76 amino acids and is found only in eukaryotes, where it is highly conserved in plants and animals. So two broad classes of proteins are targeted for destruction by ubiquitination. Short-lived proteins, short-lived proteins such as cell cycle regulators are proteins that have become damaged or mutated. So here are the uh, major steps in ubiquitin-mediated protein degradation. Ubiquitin is first conjugated to another protein and then degraded by proteasome. Ubiquitin and oligopeptides are then recycled. So in eukaryotes, all proteins are synthesized on ribosomes in the cytoplasm. However, some of these proteins end up in the nucleus, others in the mitochondria, and still others anchored in the membrane or secreted from the cells. How do these proteins know where they are supposed to do? It is called protein targeting, which is one of the three major events after the protein is synthesized. The answer to this seemingly complex problem is actually quite simple. A newly synthesized protein contains a short sequence that targets the protein to the correct place or cellular compartment. For example, a newly synthesized membrane protein or a protein destined for an organelle has a short leader peptide called signal sequence at its amino terminal end. This is the signal sequence. And proteins destined to be secreted from the cell have an amino terminal sequence that is rich in hydrophobic residues. This signal sequence binds to the proteins in the endoplasmic reticulum membrane that draw the remainder of the protein through the lipid bilayer. Here, I mean, this protein is synthesized and then it goes inside the endoplasmic reticulum. The signal sequence is cleaved from the protein in this process by an enzyme called signal peptidase. Once inside the endoplasmic reticulum, here, I mean, the signal is attached and then removed, and now the protein is inside endoplasmic reticulum. The protein is directed to the cell membrane from which it is secreted. I mean, it is secreted outside. So, important messages from our discussion on protein translation. The translation is carried out by ribosomes uh, moving along messenger RNA in the 5' to 3' direction. A set of transfer RNA molecules bring amino acids to the ribosome, and their anticodons bind to messenger RNA codons exposed on ribosomes. An incoming amino acid becomes bounded to the amino end of the growing polypeptide chain in the ribosome. Most eukaryotic proteins are inactive unless modified after translation. So some post-translational events such as phosphorylation or ubiquitination modify amino acid side groups, thus promoting protein activation or degradation respectively. So other post-translational mechanisms recognize amino acid signatures in a protein sequence and target those proteins to places where their activity is required inside or outside the cell. So for assistance, you should follow this book of Introduction to Genetic Analysis, and I have included most of this material from the ninth chapter of this book, which is Proteins and Their Synthesis. I hope you will follow this book and you will have a lot of questions. Thank you. So that's all for proteins, their translation and post translational modifications. Thank you.